9th at 2019 at 4:30. We have a quorum present, and we will start with number 1, approval of the 10/14/2019 minutes. They're in your packet. Any questions, concerns? Motion by Neal to approve, second by Martins. All in favor? Aye. Those are approved. Number 2, Human Resources Report for November.
We've got the report in the packet, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we'll put that on file. Number 3, discussion and possible action approving outsourcing of crossing guards.
We received a request from the police department, and Deputy Chief, I'm having a trouble talking today. I know one of those bees.
I'll be the Barnes guy.
Is here to talk about the proposal. He's going to take the hot seat for me.
That's fine. Well, thank you. It is a miserable evening out. A little historical perspective is the statute authorizes police departments to have crossing guards in a community. It does not require that we have them. One of the challenges we have dealt with over the last 3 or 4 years is staffing these positions, which are, I call them extreme part-time jobs. Extreme because you're out in all weather, and you start work at 7 o'clock, and then you get to work from 7 to 8, and then again from 3:30 to 4:30, so it's an hour on either end of the day. And we have been incredibly fortunate that we have people that are committed to our community to serve in that role. Some of our crossing guards have been with us for 30 plus years performing that service. So it's a little bit bittersweet because we have an opportunity to impact some positive change for our department, but it's bitter because we do have employees that have been with us for 30 years serving in that capacity. And they don't do it because they're getting rich. They do it because they enjoy the kids, they want to serve our community, and that's very commendable. But with that being said, we can't find enough people to do it. The amount of effort it would take for the police department, or I think for the HR department, to go out and recruit enough members of our community to serve as crossing guards for what we're able to pay them, we can't find them. We have tried numerous different initiatives through partnership with HR and different publications, and partnering with the school and having the entire school staff offered those jobs to be able to, the schools were willing to adjust hours of their paraprofessionals to add an hour in the morning or an hour in the evening to fill some of these gaps, and that wasn't doable. So recognizing that last year we used officers and primarily our parking people with an occasional CSO in excess of 120 times to fill vacancies when we either didn't have someone to work it, or someone was sick, or someone slipped and fell, or became injured, or had a medical condition. And it really started to negatively impact our organization in us meeting our primary needs when we're using staff to fill those positions. In working with the school and asking them for their partnership, I looked at potentially closing down some of the crossing guard sites because some of our crossings cross 3 kids a day. And we staff it for 2 hours a day. But the reason we do that with the school is unusually hazardous roadways. And I can't tell you what the definition of that is by statute, but one exists. You need to trust me. And what that means is the school, because of the amount of traffic that's on that roadway, cannot just have kids walk to school unless there's a crossing guard at that roadway or intersection. Otherwise, the school is responsible for busing those kids. So if I give you an example of the Statine School, there is a mobile home park right across the street from the Statine School. And 3 or 4 kids that live in the mobile home park go to Statine School. Statine roadway is an unusually hazardous site. So the idea that the school district would have to bus kids from the mobile home park across the road and drop them off becomes cost prohibitive when the school looks at it like, well, we're going to need 2 or 3 additional bus routes at an extremely expensive rate of pay to do that. So the opportunity of us being a good partner with them and shutting down sites that we just can't staff really negatively impacted the school. And it's for that reason that we looked at alternatives. And one of the alternatives was this organization that we've used before back in 2011 and we outsourced, and as a police department perspective, had no issues with. I was not in a leadership position at that point in time, but I will be the first one to say that the police department probably didn't follow the appropriate procurement positions, so they entered into a very expensive contract without using the council, and that's why it only lasted a year. It wasn't as a result of their poor performance or not being able to manage our crossing guards. So this is a professional organization that this is all they do is nationwide manage crossing guards. And they've assured us that they'd be able to provide this service for us. They would employ all our current crossing guards with the assumption that they can pass their physical limitation testing. So they have to be physically able to perform as crossing guards.
I'm presuming it's like a pre-employment medical evaluation to make sure that they're physically able to perform the job duties, would be my guess.
Correct. And they're more than willing to employ all our current employees, including our crossing guard supervisor. All of those employees would receive a raise of some type. I haven't negotiated the contract with them to know exactly what that'll be for everyone, but everyone would get a raise. And they would work with us. The things that are exciting for us is to not have to invest that time and resource of the police department when we want to be policing and we want to be enforcing our parking ordinances and not use that staff for crossing guards, and to not have to worry about the call-in and those type of issues. So this year, there have not been a tremendous amount of use of police department staff, but last year it was a regular occurrence and really negatively impacted us. So what the school has done is they went through DPI and got authorization to levy $44,000 to contribute toward the crossing guard cost. So if you, on the materials, if you've had a chance to look at them, if you look at the second page, the city of Wausau has budgeted $94,910 for crossing guard services. The Wausau School District has $44,000, which is a total of $138,910. And the estimate from All City Management Services is $137,979. So for zero fiscal impact, while giving our employees a raise and transferring the responsibility of managing this service to an outside organization, the police department is asking for the authorization from the council to be able to do that. Now I'm ready for questions.
I'm just one quick one. I saw the fiscal impact on the first page, I guess. It says $931 in fiscal year 2020.
Yeah, no, I apologize. That was my error. It's a 931 we would have in excess funded.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it does go, I'm one of the fortunate ones that do go back to 2011, and that was quite a lengthy discussion within the committee of the whole, as well as the city council. It wasn't just that, I think there was more issues than, I think there was some major issues with regard to how all city management was running their organization here. And there's and I wish that would have been included in the packet for today, because I think that history would have given the HR committee a little bit of understanding of what the debate back in 2011, 2012 was all about. Beginning with terminating the contract with all city management, took a vote of the committee of the whole, as well as the city council, to void that contract, and it was more than just, well, there were a variety of discussions with regard to the treatment of the employees, but I think the HR committee should have this in front of them to see a little bit of the history of what was going on back then. I know Lisa Rasmussen, as part of the city council, was heavily involved with the discussion, and I would move that we table this so that the members of the HR can have a copy of this, the historical documents that went with the terminating of that contract with all city management back in 2011, 2012.
And I apologize, the initial discussion back in 2011 also predated my tenure here with the city of Wausau. The city attorney was kind enough earlier this afternoon to share her file with me on the topic. And based on my cursory review of that file, it seems like some of the issues at hand, we're discussing the kind of the procedure that was used in securing the contract, but other than that, there were some concerns about actual fiscal savings. The police department is calculating that a little bit differently now. Previously, they actually calculated the amount of staff time that had been used towards the administration of the crossing guards, and then subtracted that from the additional costs to make it seem less expensive, and we're not doing that type of calculation this round. Some of the other concerns appeared to be internal procedures for how crossing guards are allowed to communicate with individuals, concerns over cold weather gear. It appears there was a temporary snafu with some paychecks. Yeah, so I apologize, those items weren't in the packet because I didn't have them at the time, but.
Just a couple of thoughts. One, again, I wasn't part of any decision-making or presenting to the council at that time. I know from those people that were part of that I've talked to, I asked what was the police department's perspective on the performance that they provided, and that was satisfactory, is my understanding. I will tell the committee that during the school's about to start meeting of all the crossing guards, I think one of the things that we're handling better this go-around and trying to find solutions to this issue is I laid it out to them. I said, listen, we're not going to do it. We're going to be transparent with you. I'm telling you these are major issues we deal with. Based on last year, we're looking at alternative solutions. At least in that meeting, I was told, thank you for discussing these openly with us and telling us where we're at. We like hearing it from you as opposed to hearing it from a media source or from a letter from HR saying here's where things are at. Wausau was the only city in Wisconsin at that point in time that all city management services provided this service for. Currently, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it with me in the sole source materials that I sent to finance, I think there's 8 now, but we reached out to those departments, those police departments, and asked for a review of how those services are going. Are they satisfied with them? It was resoundingly positive, and they continue to expand in Wisconsin. And at least those police chiefs who we have relationships with are like, hey, I'm absolutely supportive of them. They've delivered what they said they would deliver. We haven't had any issues. And the component of this, which might be more a finance committee issue, but is important to everyone, I think, is one of the struggles we have is when we use parking dollars or officer dollars to provide crossing guard services. And then there's a crossing guard budget as well, and where the dollars come to pay for it. And especially when, from an enterprise fund standpoint with parking, where the revenues in parking are to pay for parking staff. In this sense, what we would be doing with all city services is you're responsible providing these services. If for some reason, especially in the transition, there are gaps where they can't fill those, we bill our employees back to them at their rate of pay. So if we have to put an officer at an intersection, we're billing them significantly more per hour than they're charging us to provide those services. So I like the idea that they're financially responsible to make sure that they have those positions and those sites filled. Appropriate money is coming from the appropriate bucket to pay for those. I don't know if that addresses any of your concerns, Mr. Gisselman. I don't have any context to speak to those things.
Would this be like a year-to-year contract or a multi-year type scenario?
We have entered into no contract negotiations with them, so I mean, to some degree, I think whatever the position of the council would be. I haven't had that conversation with them yet. I felt like that was premature. My guess is they'd probably be looking for at least a 2-year commitment from us, but I also wouldn't be terribly comfortable going much longer than that on a first contract with them.
Right.
I want to perform, and then we can talk about those things, would be my position on that.
Okay. And the performance parameters well spelled out so that, our expectations are clear and, we can have redress if they're not met.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our expectation would be that if we received approval to move forward from this committee and financial approval from finance, that a contract would then be received and reviewed by the city attorney's office. And so the more information about things that we're looking for in the contract, the more we'll know what to look for and what to make sure we have based on the committee's interests.
I have a further question then.
Yeah.
I think something can be said for just the local police department safety involved. It's really the city of Wausau's safety issue. I mean, we sort of are farming this out to a California firm that really may or may not have a local, I'm not sure what kind of representative here, but with the police department, at least we know that we can, public health and safety or neighborhood groups can come to the police department and say, hey, we have an issue with the crossing guards up on Riverview or Horace Mann, and we need some more, we need to take a look at it. I think there's really a sense that, local control, local governance over this safety issue with our young people. I think that, to me, that's kind of important, rather than farming it out to a California firm that may or may, of course, I'm sure they have sensitivity to safety issues, but I think that knowing that safety concern is residing with the city council and the police department, and resolving and methods to deal with it, I think that's
Well, I think that
an issue that I think sort of, are we paying the crossing guards enough? Maybe if we have an issue with hiring, maybe we need to take a look at that. I don't know what that is.
Sure, and you raise valid concerns. I don't think there's anyone at the police department, definitely not the chief, myself, or Tony for that matter, that would want to give up the ability to address safety issues and be responsive to the neighborhoods or the concerns that they have. We would still be the manager of the contract. We're still the client. We still perform quality control. The part of the contract is that they have a local supervisor who's responsible for providing oversight. It would likely be the exact same supervisor that we have right now that goes out and checks on the guards and makes sure that they're capable and that they're doing their jobs. So the idea, if your concern is, could a resident of Riverview have a concern about an intersection or their crossing guard, they could still bring it to the police department, because we would be the ones reaching out to that company to address those concerns. So I don't, although I appreciate your concern, that's not a concern of mine, recognizing how this would work and the role we would still play in addressing concerns that people would have. The difference is we wouldn't be investing regular time and trying to schedule around filling these positions. And at the end of the day, I think a significant component, as we have worked and worked and worked for the last 3 or 4 years to try and, I can't give the school district a resource that we don't have. And when we have 13 crossing guard locations, or I need 13 crossing guards, and we only have 11, and they're like, we need 13, and I only have 11, I can't give them what we don't have. And I can't justify, for an intersection that has 3 kids crossing, taking a police officer off their sector to fill that need, which is those are things that we've had to do. So having an organization that this is what they do, they have a system in place to market, they're confident that they're going to do it, they're contractually obligated to perform that. That's the motivation of the police department to be coming forward and asking for this. If I thought we could do it with little effort and that we were going to be successful from this day forward in the future, I wouldn't be here asking to spend, I wouldn't ask you to spend the school district's money to try and solve this issue for us. but it's a cost benefit to the school district to not have to bus additional kids, and it's a benefit to us to not have to use our staff to backfill. And every other community we've talked to that is using their services either for this year or for the last several years has reported to us that they're successful at filling their spots and they have zero complaints. One chief said, the first couple weeks in transition was a little rough as some of our staff didn't want to transition to a new company, but it lasted a couple weeks and we've been totally satisfied since. So I'm basing some of my confidence to you in, I trust these chiefs. They don't have a dog in the fight to lead me down the wrong path in their communications to us. And I know that we have not been effective at putting people on the intersections to be able to cross our kids.
Okay, I think you might have partially answered this question, but, if the police department and HR are having trouble attracting crossing guards, what assurances do we have from this company that they'll be able to fill these positions?
Well, their assurances are they're going to be contractually obligated to fill that for us, and it's a financial loss for them if they can't, because we would provide the staff to do that at a rate that's more expensive than what they're charging us to fill those. So they have confidence that they'll be able to do that. They have whole marketing teams within their organization to recruit and invest way more time than the police department has, or to be honest with you, I don't want to speak for Tony, than HR has to be going around recruiting. That's what they do for a living, and they're professionals at it. So I have their confidence. I have the other communities throughout the state of Wisconsin, similar cities to ours, Appleton, Sun Prairie, West Bend, for example, who were all having the same issues we were, and then they contracted with them, and now it's a non-problem for them, and they're like, they put appropriate bodies at the intersections to safely cross the kids. So I don't have anything I can show you on paper that says, look, here's a guarantee that they can do that or an assurance, other than they lose money if they don't.
I think we have some words from the city attorney.
Madam Chair, I want to point out to you that unless.
Come on up to the microphone.
Through this motion.
Yes, there is a motion at hand for
A
this
motion
item
to
to be
table,
tabled
which should
for
have
the
drawn a-
inclusion of historical documents.
Right, which should have you should have sought a second immediately, and then the discussion would have been limited on that vote as to whether or not to table it. And if it had failed, then you could have moved to adopt it, gotten a second, and then moved forward with further discussion. I didn't want you to lose sight of the fact
Yeah.
that there
So
was a
I'll
motion to
withdraw my
table on
motion.
the floor.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I do have a note here that we have a motion from Alderperson.
Okay.
So I'll withdraw that motion.
Oh, okay.
But let me say that I'm going to vote against this at this time. It does go to finance, correct?
Yes, this item,
So
I believe,
if
is
there were
scheduled for
issues with
tomorrow.
finance, most likely, and if that was one of the major issues with the contract last time, maybe that will solve that and come back to the city council. And I'll take a look at some of the documents and we'll revisit it again back at city council. But right now, until I'm familiar with what the debate was back in 2011, 2012, I'll be voting no.
Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Martins. All in favor? Aye. Aye myself. Nay is Gisselman. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll seek to have the materials that you were speaking of, Mr. Gisselman, forwarded to the Finance Committee. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I can ensure that those get out to the affected individuals.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 4, we have a closed session. So, and this is in regard to a bargaining agreement with Amalgamated Transit Union. So does somebody want to read that for me? Thank you.
First thing, Madam Chair, do we need to go to close for any particular reason? I mean, having gone through the materials that I've received, I don't really see much there in the way for us to go in and talk about negotiations or whatnot, unless somebody does have a clear and present concern, then of course.
Yeah, I would recommend going into close if we wanted to have an in-depth discussion about kind of our competitive or bargaining reasons. But if the committee is content and simply wants to take a vote, there would be no reason to go into closed session. Or if if we're looking for anything other than a summary of the changes, which I can give in open session.
The agenda is there's one item on the agenda which does say that we do go into, it's not a, is there an option? Maybe our city attorney can,
There's discussion and possible action, and one of the actions can be to go into close.
that was for the outsourcing of crossing guards.
And the question at hand would be, are we obligated by the agenda to go into closed, or could we simply reconvene and vote on the items?
Because you've agendized it, doesn't require you to go into closed session. They can choose not to move to do that or not pass a motion in a second. But you can't do it if it's not on the agenda.
Thank you. To summarize for our listeners at home, the advice was that because it's agendized, we have the option to go closed, but we are not obligated to do so.
And so it shall be. So what is the pleasure?
Well, unless I hear from the committee any concerns that they want to discuss in closed, I would move to approve the agreement as presented.
Mr. Martins?
I'll second that.
Mr. Kisselman, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to step on toes here. Okay, I'm fine with it as well. So we have a motion to accept. Is there any, do you want to go through the changes as you said?
Sure.
Thank you.
So in your packet, we have a kind of summary of the negotiated changes for the contract. Throughout the entire agreement, we're updating outdated information that usually refers to dates. So anywhere in the contract where it referred to the previous contract period, we're going to update that with the current contract period. We're looking at a 2.5-year contract at this time. It gets us back onto a summer negotiating schedule, which helps the transit director in budgeting because those budgets have to be submitted to the state. He has a little bit earlier deadline than the rest of us have. We're updating the vacation section. Shortly after this contract was agreed, this committee approved increasing non-represented employees' vacation balances. So this just mimics that benefit for these union employees. And we're also going to begin allowing part-time employees to carry over 20 hours of vacation from year to year. Our current non-represented employees are also allowed to carry over vacation time, so this gets them back on track with that. We're updating some of the sick leave language. General or non-represented employees are allowed to use sick leave for medical and dental appointments. We're extending that benefit to these union individuals. We're updating the PEP eligibility. PEP is that post-employment health plan. We're updating that language for clarity. It's a bit confusing right now, so we're hoping to clear it up. And then finally, we're updating some PAL leave eligibility to reflect current practices. Right now, we use a 6-month rolling period for qualifying for a perfect attendance leave day, but the language doesn't reflect that, so just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Under the insurance article, Article 13, we would be granting part-time bus operator 1 employee-only dental insurance once our current dental contract is up. So we currently are locked in on a contract until the end of next year. So this would extend that benefit to part-time bus operator 1s only for themselves, not for their families. This benefit is not shared by any other part-time employees with the city. Under uniforms, we're adding a provision to reimburse shop employees for replacement prescription safety lenses according to current city practice in other departments. We're looking to add a safety policy that would require shop employees to wear safety lenses in certain areas. And for comfort more than anything else, we're allowing individuals who have prescription lenses to have those items replaced. The city would kick in about $90 a year for replacement lenses, provided they met our safety standards. 22, union dues checkoff. We would be removing newly dead language covering the fair share agreement after the Janus decision. Right now, open enrollment forms are provided by the city, so we would just change that to they'd be provided by the union. And then finally, our current practice is we deduct dues from first and second pay periods, but the current language says we only do it in the first pay period, so we're just doing some updating on that language as well. And then finally, Appendix A for wages. The city currently has a memorandum of understanding with the union governing bus operator 1 wages. Essentially what we asked is, can we hire people at step 2? And we've been doing that for about 6 months to a year, and it had a drastic impact on our staffing levels. We are now, we only have 1 vacancy, and that position is actually being held open vacant. So it's the first time in a long time we've stopped recruiting for bus operators. So what we've done is we've built that MOU into the contract. That step 2 will become step 1 for both bus operator 1s and paratransit operator 1. And then everyone else would receive a 3% increase. In the future 2 years of the contract, it would be a 2% increase and a 2% increase. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but that is a brief and probably slightly muddled summary of the changes.
Any questions? Okay, we'll vote on the.
Do we have a second?
Yes, Mr. Martin seconded, yep. So all in favor of this bargaining agreement, stay aye. Aye. And that passes unanimously.
I believe that this contract is scheduled to go before the union for ratification this week, and then we're hoping that it would be addressed at the next council, so not tomorrow night, but our next scheduled council meeting.
I just wanted to say thank you to Tony and her staff and HR for putting this together. It went relatively very smoothly, so thank you, Tony.
It really was a joint effort. I will say that negotiating with this union in particular is always very pleasant. The management staff and over in Metro are extremely knowledgeable and very helpful. We're also putting into place some trainings. I had some extra HR staff come to kind of see what negotiating staff is like, and we had some hopefully future managers with Metro participate as well. So, good.
Okay, future agenda items. Anything on the horizon that we need to worry about? Go ahead.
I've kind of mentioned this, I think, in the past, and just to reiterate or say it a different way, I'd like to see if we have an effective or aggressive hiring effort to ensure more diversity in all departments.
Can we put that on the agenda?
Sure. I actually have been looking at ways that perhaps we can reflect it in the HR report, but we also could have it listed as a discussion item if the committee so desired.
Yeah, I'd be interested not only in hires, but also applications.
Yeah, that'd be great. How many applications?
Sure.
Yeah, that's a good point to put it in the report.
There is, so generally speaking, when you're looking at this, there is a kind of a standard format that I can go ahead and explain. There are no legal regulations for percentage of hiring, but there's a rule of thumb in place, which is kind of 4/5. So I can start pulling those numbers.
Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Something we started earlier this year, actually it's been ongoing for some time, and reaching out when we have police and fire commission meetings, for example, as far as reaching out to minorities, as far as what is holding them back, if you will, to try to find out what is going on, so to speak. Police is doing fine. Fire traditionally has had some issues, but we have been trying to implement something as far as gaining some more attention for minority applications.
Can I just, maybe an update sometime next year with regard to staff training, internal training with regard to diversity awareness. I don't know what kind of in-service we have, what kind of continuing education we have with regard to the great variety of diversity that comes, and maybe even, just update, what do we do? What does the city do for its employees to bring awareness and sensitivity to its employees so that we can, go forth?
We can do that, but also CIVMIC has had classes on exclusivity and diversity throughout, and employees have attended that. As far as an actual number, I can't give that to you right now. But different members of employees have attended that, and then also meetings at the YMCA for some, or YW, excuse me, for some time.
I'm sure that they've been going on, but just sort of an update with regard to what has been done. What are some of the types of continuing education classes that we do provide through a variety of other agencies?
Yeah, we can give you a comprehensive list or an update at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any other agenda items? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to adjourn. We have a motion by motion by Neal, second by Martins. All in favor, say aye. Aye, and we are adjourned.